The chandeliers above the Callaway Grand Hotel ballroom were Owen Hart's work. He had hung every one of them the previous Tuesday, standing on a scaffold for 9 hours. Now he sat in the corner of the same room in his maintenance uniform, a name badge clipped to his chest, a cup of tea going cold in front of him. The gala had filled around him, while he finished some paperwork at the one table nobody else wanted. He had not been invited. He had simply not left yet. Then he heard small shoes on polished floor. 4 little girls in pastel dresses appeared from somewhere between the dessert table and a column wrapped in white ribbon. They stopped directly in front of him. One of them leaned forward and brought her mouth close to his ear. "Sir, please, pretend you're our father." The 4 girls stood in a perfectly straight line. They were 6, maybe 7, with dark blonde hair and matching navy trim dresses in 4 different shades of pastel, pink, white, lavender, and pale blue that had clearly started the evening in better shape than they were currently in. Their sashes had surrendered to entropy some time ago. They looked at Owen with the collective focus of children who had made a decision together and were now committed to it. The one on the left spoke first. She had a ponytail beginning to list to one side, and she spoke with the precision of a child who has spent considerable time listening to adults and has concluded she can do it better. "We've been watching this room for 11 minutes, she said. Owen set his cup down. "Okay, we looked at everyone here." "Everyone," confirmed the second girl, standing with her arms at her sides, as though presenting a conclusion to a committee. "And you're the only one who wasn't pretending," said the third, holding a small coin purse against her chest with both hands. "Pretending to what?" Owen asked. The first girl tilted her head. "To be happy." He opened his mouth. He closed it again. The first girl seemed to take this as confirmation, rather than confusion. She introduced herself as Lily. The second was Rose. The third, who held the coin purse, was Clara. The fourth, with a smear of something chocolate on her left wrist and an air of general contentment, was June. Lily explained the situation with efficiency. There was a man near the entrance in a gray suit who kept looking at their mother. Not the way people looked at her when they wanted to talk. The other way, the way that made Lily feel like something careful was being calculated. They didn't know his name. They only knew their mother hadn't noticed yet, and that when she did, she would face it alone the way she faced everything, which was too much alone. Clara stepped forward and placed the coin purse on the table. She unzipped it and tipped the contents out. A few folded dollar bills, 3 quarters, a dime, and a button. The button was yellow, shaped like an anchor. "We didn't know what fathers cost," June said. "We've never had one at a party before." Owen pushed the coin purse back toward Clara. "Keep it," he said. "Call it a trade. I sit with you, you sit with me." Lily looked at the other 3. Something passed between them at a frequency adults could not quite catch. "Deal," she said. While the woman in the red dress made her way across the room toward them, June asked Owen if he had any children of his own. He told her about Sam, 6 years old, home and asleep, a neighbor watching him. Rose asked where Sam's mother was. The table went quiet in a careful way, the kind that opens a space for something true. "She passed away," Owen said. 3 years ago. The 4 girls were still. Not the stillness of children who don't know what to say, but the stillness of children who understand loss from the inside. Clara looked at him. When she spoke, her voice was very small. "Our dad didn't pass away. He just left." She paused. "He said 4 was too many." Owen looked at her. He did not say anything. His hand, resting on the table, tightened almost imperceptibly. What stayed with Owen, in the months that came later, was not the grief itself, but the particular shape of the silence that surrounded it. People had come and gone in those early weeks, casseroles from neighbors, phone calls from his mother-in-law, a card from Sam's teacher that said something kind and general. Everyone had arrived with something to offer and left feeling they had done what they could. And they had. He did not blame anyone, but there was a specific kind of alone that began after the last casserole dish had been returned and the last phone call had gone unanswered, and it was just him and Sam in the kitchen at 6 in the morning, 2 people figuring out a new arrangement of the world without a map, That kind of alone was not something you could borrow your way out of. You just had to walk through it until it became something you recognized well enough to carry. What he had learned to carry was this: that grief does not replace the living. Sam had taught him that without trying. On the mornings when Owen could not find the right thing to say, Sam had said something anyway, something small and exact and entirely his own. He had taught Owen that the day continues, that breakfast happens, that a 6-year-old has opinions about what cereal constitutes a good day, and all of that is true at the same time the other thing is also true. He had tried to protect Sam from the grief in the beginning, the way parents try. He had lasted approximately 2 weeks. Then Sam came to the breakfast table one morning and said, "Dad, you don't look okay." He was 6. After that, Owen had stopped pretending. He told Sam, in the simple language they shared, that he missed Mom, and that it made some days harder, and that they were going to figure it out together. Sam had listened, thought about it for a full minute. Owen had timed it, watching the kitchen clock, and then said, "Okay, can I have more cereal?" That was the deal. They were allowed to miss her and still have a good day. Both things could be true. Sitting at the corner table now, Owen looked at Clara and understood something. The coin purse. The criteria. The 11 minutes of watching. These girls had been doing their own version of carrying, their own version of figuring out a new arrangement of the world, and they had arrived at the same conclusion Sam had, that pretending did not help and that the only option was to find something real to hold on to. He understood it the way you understand things that happen in your chest rather than your head. Clara was still watching him. Her hands had loosened slightly around the coin purse. "What does Sam like?" she asked. "Cereal," Owen said. "And stories. He tells me one every morning. I write it down and fold it up and keep it in my pocket, in case he needs a rope back to himself somewhere else." "Why a rope?" "Because sometimes being in a new place feels like being far from home," he said. "And a story from home is a way back." Clara considered this. She looked at the coin purse, then at the yellow anchor button in Owen's hand. "Do you have one with you tonight?" "I do," he said. She looked at her sisters. Rose gave the smallest of nods. June was already leaning forward. Diana Voss arrived at the corner table without rushing. She looked at the scene, 4 daughters arranged around a man in a maintenance uniform, a coin purse sitting open between them, and her expression did not resolve into anything simple. Owen stood, not the practiced deference of someone in a service role, just up, present, without calculation. Diana looked at the name badge, then at him. "You work here," she said. "Not a question. Building maintenance. Evening shift." He paused. "I'm sorry if—" "Don't apologize," she said. She looked at the empty chair beside Lily. Then she sat down in it, which was not what she had planned to do. Lily explained that they had not chosen him at random. They had watched the room all evening. They had seen him give up his seat to an older staff member, catch a stumbling child near the dessert table, and drink his cold tea without complaining once. She said it all with the efficiency of someone who had rehearsed. "I picked him," Lily said, "because he looked like the kind of person who stays." Diana looked at her daughter for a long moment, then at Owen. She did not have anything to say to that. Neither did he. The coin purse sat between them. The anchor button lay beside it. Diana glanced at it briefly, then looked across the room at the man in the gray suit, who was still watching. Garrett Cole. 2 years on her board. She turned back to the table and said nothing about him. Not yet. They had been there perhaps 20 minutes when Garrett arrived. He was good at timing. He came around to the side of the table nearest Owen's chair and stood there rather than sitting a statement about who belonged and who was being tolerated. He rested one hand on the back of the empty seat beside Owen, not touching him, but occupying the space in a way that was unmistakable. He said he owed an apology. He said it with warmth, with the expression of a man who has chosen his words thoughtfully and wants full credit for the choosing. He had been protective of Diana, he said. Old habit. He watched a lot of people try to get close to her for the wrong reasons, and he understood Owen probably meant well. He just wanted to make sure Diana had the right people around her. He let his eyes fall to the name badge, then to the open coin purse. The glance lasted less than a second. He asked, with genuine seeming concern, whether Owen was perhaps part of the venue staff. He mentioned that the coordinator usually preferred staff to remain at their stations during events. He offered to go clarify the situation just to make sure no one got in trouble over a simple misunderstanding. He said it all with the helpful smile of someone doing a favor. Lily looked at Owen. She was very still, waiting. Owen looked at the tablecloth. His jaw settled into the particular stillness of someone who has stood in rooms like this one before, who has heard words that come dressed as courtesy, and knows the words available to him are never quite the right kind for a room like this. He had learned that a long time ago. He said only one thing. "I think you should go back to where you were standing." No anger in it, no challenge. Just a fact stated plainly by someone who knew it was true. Garrett's smile held. He said, "Of course, of course." He straightened his jacket. He looked at Diana, once a look that carried the weight of 2 years of carefully managed concern, and then he walked away. Diana did not look at Owen after Garrett left. She looked at the table. Her left thumb moved across her wrist, across the smooth skin where a ring had once sat, a small involuntary motion she had been making for 2 years without always knowing she was doing it. The room recalibrated. The laughter resumed its orbit. Garrett returned to his position near the entrance, where he stood speaking to a cluster of board members, and occasionally let his attention drift back to the corner table. June asked Owen if he was sad. He said no. She looked at him with the evaluating expression of a child who is taking measurements. "You look a little sad," she said. He looked at her, and for the first time that evening, the corner of his mouth moved upward. "Noted," he said. Clara was the one who began to cry. It started quietly, the way real crying starts from somewhere internal before the child has registered it herself. It was not performed and it was not loud. Her shoulders came in, and her chin dropped, and the tears arrived before she had time to decide anything about them. She made no sound at first. The stillness of it was the thing that broke something in the air around the table, the way a held breath is louder than any noise. Owen was already moving before he thought about it. He did not stand over her. He did not lean down from a height. He crouched in front of her chair and brought himself to her level, the way he did on the night Sam woke at 2 a.m, for reasons neither of them could name. He did not say anything right away. He had learned, from long experience, that silence can be its own kind of presence, that sometimes the most useful thing is to simply be at the same level as the person who is hurting, and stay there. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, soft and a little worn, the kind of paper that has lived in a pocket for a while. He held it out to her without unfolding it. She looked at it. "What is it?" "The story," he said. "The one I told you about." Clara took the paper. Her fingers were still unsteady. She unfolded it carefully, the way you handle something you've been told matters, smoothing the creases with both thumbs before she looked at the words. Lily and Rose and June leaned in to see 3 heads tipping toward a single center of gravity, the way they moved toward anything that mattered. The ballroom continued on around them. The orchestra, the low current of laughter, the soft collision of glasses, somewhere near the bar. But the corner table had become its own country, with its own weather and its own language. Owen stayed where he was, at eye level, not rushing anything, giving the moment room to move at its own speed. Clara read, her mouth pressed together. Then, slowly, it softened. A sound came out of her that was almost a laugh, real and small, and entirely unexpected, even to her. She read it again, her hands steadied. 10 feet away, Diana Voss stopped walking. She had been returning from a conversation near the far end of the room, and came back to find Owen crouched on the ballroom floor in his maintenance uniform, a piece of folded paper in Clara's hands, the 4 girls leaning in around him like he was a source of warmth. She stood and watched his left hand rest lightly on Clara's knee, not gripping, not rubbing, just there. Present. The way you hold something that is still finding its balance. Diana's right hand moved to her sternum without her noticing. She stood that way for almost a full minute before she walked back to the table. 10 feet away, Diana Voss stopped walking. She had been returning from a conversation near the far end of the room, and came back to find Owen crouched on the ballroom floor in his maintenance uniform, a piece of folded paper in Clara's hands, the four girls leaning in around him like he was a source of warmth. She stood and watched his left hand rest lightly on Clara's knee. Not gripping. Not rubbing. Just there. Present. The way you hold something that is still finding its balance. She did not move for almost a full minute. Diana's right hand moved to her sternum without her noticing. She stood that way for almost a full minute before she walked back to the table. Garrett returned at 20 minutes past 9. This time he had two board members with him, positioned at his flanks in a way that was clearly intentional. He placed a manila envelope on the table in front of Diana, with the care of someone delivering information they have been sitting on for exactly the right moment. He said it was something she should be aware of, a supplemental legal filing connected to the asset dispute with her former husband Marcus, submitted that morning. He had become aware of it through channels he couldn't fully disclose, but felt she deserved to know because of how much he cared about her stability heading into next week's board meeting. There were some concerns, he said, using the word gently, as though it were a diagnosis, about how the optics of certain recent decisions might read to outside investors. He spoke slowly, making sure each phrase landed. He looked at Owen. I'm sure your guest understands this is a private matter. The implication was plain. Private. Meaning, not for you. Owen looked at Diana, not to see whether she needed him to act, just to see whether she was all right. She sat very straight. Her hands were in her lap. The CEO expression had returned the one that gave nothing away, but he watched her fingers tighten slightly on the fabric of her dress. He did not stand. He did not look at Garrett. He turned to Lily instead. Would you like some tea? Yes, please, Lily said, very properly. He signaled one of the passing waitstaff with a quiet lift of his hand. Calm, unhurried, as though Garrett Cole were simply weather. Diana looked at him then. Not the measuring look she had been using all evening. Not the careful assessment of someone building a case. She looked at him the way you look at something you did not expect to find, and finding it, do not quite know what to do with yet. June reached into the small pocket of her pale blue dress and pulled out a phone, an older model, with a cracked corner of the screen. She held it out to Owen. I want to show you something, she said. On the screen was a video, recorded in what appeared to be a living room. The four girls sat on a couch in their regular clothes, a piece of paper between them on the cushions. The paper had a handwritten list. They were conducting what was clearly meant to be an interview, though there was no one else in the frame. They read the criteria aloud. He had to be patient. He had to know how to fix things. He couldn't mind noise. He had to be willing to eat whatever was made for dinner, even if it was bad. He had to be someone who showed up when he said he would. And at the bottom of the list, in slightly larger letters, underlined twice, he can't leave when things get hard. Owen watched the video to the end. Then he looked at Diana. Diana looked at the phone. Then at the table. A slow exhale. She had known about the video. The girls had made it 2 weeks after they moved to Portland, while she was on a work call in the other room. She had watched it alone one night after they were asleep and had not known what to do with the feeling it left her with. She had not known they had brought it here. You were doing interviews, Owen said to June. June nodded. We hadn't found the right one yet. Diana stood. She did not stand because anyone told her to. She stood because something had been building for 2 years, and tonight it had gotten loud enough to require a response. She said Garrett's name. Once, she told him what she knew. She had looked back through 2 years of correspondence since the night she found one email forwarded to a contact she had never authorized. She had spoken with Marcus Chen, who described a call in which someone had suggested he reconsider a partnership because she was difficult to pin down. She had spoken with the Delancey Group's assistant, who confirmed the same. She did not raise her voice. She read the facts in the order they had occurred, without embellishment and without space for negotiation. You've been making me smaller, she said. One careful conversation at a time. And you've been calling it concern. Garrett's warmth strained at the edges. He used an old name. The one from before. She took back her family name after the divorce. He said he had only ever tried to protect her. "You've been on my board for 2 years," she said. "In that time, you canceled 3 site visits, missed every volunteer commitment, and built the foundation for a dinner at which I was not present." She let that sit for a moment. "I'd like you to resign before Monday. If you don't, I'll bring the full correspondence to the board." The 2 board members at his flanks looked at the floor. One had taken a half-step backward. Almost unconsciously, Garrett looked at Owen once. Owen was looking at the anchor button on the table. He had picked it up without realizing it and was turning it slowly in his fingers. Garrett left. The corner table breathed. Diana sat back down. Her shoulders dropped slightly, not much, but enough. Her eyes closed for 2 seconds. When they opened, she looked at Owen directly, the look of a person who has set something down after carrying it for a long time. Owen slid the tea across the table to her. "His was cold," he said. "But there was still some in it." Diana looked at the cup. She looked at him. She picked it up and drank from it without hesitating. Rose and June had leaned together in their chairs. Clara was asleep with the folded paper still held loosely in both hands. Only Lily remained upright, watching her mother. Owen asked Diana how she had known about the emails. She said she had gone back through records she hadn't looked at carefully enough, too busy managing everything else to notice what was being managed for her. "I kept thinking the problem was me," she said. "That maybe 4 kids and a company and a divorce was too many variables." She paused, then told him about the parking lot. 2 in the morning, the girls asleep in the back seat, signing papers alone. She hadn't cried about the marriage. She had cried because she understood, sitting there, that from that point forward, she would be doing all of it without anyone to hand the difficult parts to. "I hadn't cried the whole day," she said. "I thought that meant I was fine." "Lily said you were the only one in the room who wasn't pretending," Diana said. "I'm not very good at it," Owen said. "I lasted maybe 2 weeks after my wife died before Sam looked at me at the breakfast table and said, 'Dad, you don't look okay.'" He paused. "He was 6. Diana laughed. A real laugh, the first of the evening, the kind that reaches the eyes and doesn't stop to think about itself first. "Children never let you get away with anything," she said. "No," Owen said. "They really don't." Her hand was on the table. It moved, slightly, and came to rest against the side of his. Neither of them moved for a moment. June stirred in her chair, opened her eyes halfway, registered the scene, and closed her eyes again with the quiet satisfaction of someone whose plan is proceeding correctly. The next morning, Owen's coworker found him in the maintenance hallway before the first shift briefing and informed him, with the frank delight of someone delivering news, that someone had taken a photograph at the gala. Owen at the corner table with Diana Voss. It had apparently made a small circuit among the hotel staff. Owen said nothing. His shift supervisor called him in that afternoon for what he described as a brief clarification. Owen explained the situation simply and without drama. His supervisor nodded, asked a few questions, nodded again, and sent him back to work. There were no professional consequences, but Owen knew the story was out, the way stories in small professional circles always get out. He had been in those situations before, moments when the world decided it had an opinion about where he was supposed to be and who he was supposed to be there with. He had learned that explaining yourself to people who have already decided the story rarely changes anything. So he went back to work and fixed a thermostat on the 2nd floor and replaced 2 light fixtures in the east corridor. That evening, Sam asked him about the 4 girls. Owen told it simply, leaving out most of the details. Sam listened with the focused attention he brought to things he considered important. When Owen finished, Sam was quiet for a moment. "Were they sad?" he asked. "Sometimes," Owen said. "Like me?" "Yeah. Like you." Sam thought about it. "Then it was right that you stayed with them," he said. Owen looked at his son for a long moment. He was not entirely sure, in that moment, who had taught whom. Diana called the following evening. Not to thank him, her first words established that clearly. She wanted to know if there had been any professional fallout on his end. Her voice was different from the one she used at the gala. The CEO register was still there, but under it, something more ordinary. Something that did not need to be managed. Owen told her there hadn't been. She said she was sorry for pulling him into it. He told her she hadn't pulled him into anything. Lily had done that. He had chosen to stay. There was a pause on the line. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "I know," she said. He asked if she and the girls were all right. She said yes. Then, after a pause, "Clara still has the paper. She keeps it folded in her coat pocket." Owen was quiet for a moment. Outside the window, Sam was in the backyard turning over rocks in the way he did when he needed to think about something. "That's what it's for," Owen said. There was another pause, longer this time, the kind of silence that is not empty but occupied. Two people on either end of a line figuring out the shape of whatever this was. "Owen," Diana said, "thank you." He let it sit. Then, "You're welcome." She was about to say goodbye when June's voice came through the line from somewhere behind her, asking a question about dinner, and Diana said, "Hold on just a second," and Owen listened to the sound of a household at 6 in the evening, questions overlapping, something clattering in a kitchen, Lily's voice rising in a register that suggested an ongoing dispute, and he stayed on the line longer than he had planned, not saying anything, just listening to the ordinary fullness of it, until Diana came back. "Sorry," she said. "It's a lot of noise." "I know," Owen said. "I don't mind." The following Saturday, Owen arrived at the door of the house Diana had rented in the northeast part of the city. He had a canvas tool bag and a thermos of coffee. In the text exchange about a building maintenance contract, a separate, professional matter involving a property she co-owned, she had mentioned once, in passing, that the kitchen cabinet doors had been sticking for 2 months. He had written it down in the part of his mind where things went that needed to be fixed. He had brought Sam. Sam walked through the front door and stopped in the entryway, looking at the 4 pairs of small shoes piled near the door in complete organizational chaos. One shoe from a pair was on its side. A sandal had ended up entirely under a rain boot. It was the entryway of a house where 4 6-year-olds had been coming and going and had not once been asked to sort their footwear, and it was the most alive thing Owen had seen walking into a home in 3 years. "At least somebody actually lives here," Sam said. June appeared from around a corner and inspected Sam with tremendous seriousness before deciding he was acceptable. She offered him the tour of the first floor, which took 4 minutes, and included a detailed explanation of which couch cushion was hers and why that rule was non-negotiable. Sam listened with the respectful attention of someone who has just arrived in a foreign country and is trying to understand its laws. Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, registered Owen's presence, and called back to her sisters in a tone that carried the distinct note of, "I told you so." Owen set his bag down and went to look at the kitchen cabinets. Diana stood in the kitchen doorway with a mug of coffee, watching him work. He did not narrate. He did not perform competence. He looked at the problem, identified it, a warped hinge on the lower cabinet, a loose bracket on the upper right, and fixed it with the same quiet efficiency he brought to everything. He had the kind of hands that know what they are doing without needing to explain themselves, and the kind of patience that does not require an audience. "You didn't have to come on a Saturday," she said. "You didn't have to come on a Saturday," she said. "It's a better day for it," he said. He tightened the final screw, tested the door twice, and closed it cleanly. He opened it again, just to be sure. It swung without resistance. "The others are fine. Just that one." He stepped back and looked at the cabinet the way he looked at everything he fixed, not with satisfaction exactly, but with the particular stillness of someone confirming that a thing will hold. She handed him the second mug she had poured, without asking whether he wanted coffee. He took it. From somewhere down the hall came the sound of Sam's voice mid-story, emphatic, and 4 voices responding over each other. Clara had materialized on the kitchen floor near the baseboards, reading with the serene detachment of someone who has made peace with noise. Owen looked at the crayon marks near the baseboard that someone had partially scrubbed and given up on, the dented corner of the refrigerator door, the height marks penciled up the wall inside the pantry, labeled in 4 different handwriting styles, and beside them, a 5th set of marks Sam's height measured carefully by Lily the week before, she would later explain, just in case he came back. He looked at the kitchen for a long moment. He thought about the house the way he thought about everything he repaired. Not whether it could be made perfect, but whether it could be made to hold. He thought it could. 1 month after the gala, Garrett Coles submitted his resignation to the board. He framed it as a personal decision, citing other commitments. No one on the board pressed for details. The asset dispute with Marcus moved through a mediation process and resolved in Diana's favor, not entirely, the lawyers had told her, but sufficiently. The company was intact. Her position was intact. She received the news on a Wednesday morning, sitting in her car in the school drop-off line. All 4 girls had already gone inside. The street was quiet. She sat with her phone in her lap for 10 minutes, not calling anyone, not opening anything, just sitting with it. She had been in enough boardrooms to know that a resolved dispute was not the same as a closed chapter, that the work of rebuilding what had been quietly dismantled would take longer than the legal process. But the foundation was still there. She had held on to it. Then she called Owen. He was on the 3rd floor of the Callaway Grand, checking a circuit panel. He stepped into the hallway and answered. She told him. He listened without saying anything until she finished. "Are you all right?" he said. A long pause. "I don't know yet. But I'm not sitting alone in a parking lot this time." "That's progress," he said. That afternoon, he left his shift at the regular time, picked up Sam from school, and drove across the city to the girls' school. He had texted Diana that morning to let her know. It was the first time he had done it without being asked, without there being a specific reason beyond the fact that it was 3:45 and someone needed to be there. Lily was the first one down the front steps. She looked at his car. She looked at Owen. She turned around to her sisters coming out behind her. "I told you," she said. The drive home was 5 children in various states of noise and energy. June had approximately 14 questions about a cloud she had seen that looked like a dog. Rose and Sam were having a conversation about something involving a stick they had both apparently found meaningful. Clara fell asleep within 4 minutes, and did so quietly, which was consistent with her character. Owen drove. He did not count the seats. He did not notice the absence of anything. He was simply driving, with the ordinary fullness of a car that has too many people in it and not enough quiet. He thought about what the Callaway Grand Gala had been, a Saturday evening in a maintenance uniform. Cold tea going cold. A man who had not quite left yet, and what it had become. The distance between those two things was not dramatic. It was just time, and the particular persistence of people who do not walk away from tables when they could. Diana was waiting at the curb when they pulled up. She had finished a work call early, she said, though the way she said it suggested she had arranged it. She opened the rear door, and June transferred mid-story to her without breaking stride. Owen watched Diana listen, fully present, no part of her somewhere else. She asked the right question. June grabbed her hand and pointed at the sky, and Diana looked up, and the two of them stood on the sidewalk deciding what a cloud shaped like a dog was doing up there on a Wednesday afternoon. Sam leaned slightly toward Owen. "She's good," he said quietly. Owen looked at his son. "Yeah," he said. "She is." 11 months after the Callaway Grand Gala, the coin purse and the yellow anchor button and the folded piece of paper with Sam's story on it sat in a small glass frame on the wall of Diana's living room. Lily had decided they belonged there. She had been very certain about it, and when Lily was certain about something, the matter was generally settled. Every Saturday morning, the Callaway Grand held a table in the corner by the window. 8 chairs. The staff put it there without being asked anymore. The host who worked Saturday mornings had stopped asking whether they needed a reservation. She just set the table and placed a small sign on it that said reserved. Every Saturday morning, the Callaway Grand held a table in the corner by the window. 8 chairs. The staff put it there without being asked anymore. The host who worked Saturday mornings had stopped asking whether they needed a reservation. Owen's tea was usually cold by the time he finished it. Diana drank coffee. She had stopped bringing her laptop on Saturday mornings. Sam narrated his school week in the third person. Clara read. Rose and Lily conducted ongoing negotiations. June looked out the window and asked questions about the world that no one had satisfactory answers to. "Not yet," Owen said. Sam considered this. "Not yet" isn't the same as no. Owen looked at his son. The corner of his mouth moved upward slightly, and he said nothing, which Sam appeared to file as the answer he expected. Diana's hand was on the table. At some point during the conversation, it moved and came to rest against Owen's. Neither of them commented on it. Neither of them moved away. June saw it. She turned to Clara and whispered something. Clara did not look up from her book. She turned a page. "I knew from the first 11 minutes, Clara said. "Some things get lost. People leave, or they are taken, or they walk out of rooms and do not come back, and the space they occupied becomes the kind of absence you learn to carry because you have no other option. Some grief is not dramatic. It is quiet and functional, and you stop noticing it the way you stop noticing the weight of something you have been holding long enough. And some things are found. In the corner of a room where the chandeliers hang overhead, and the tea has gone cold, and a man is sitting with his name badge on and his hands flat on the white linen, not pretending to be fine, just sitting there, and 4 small girls have been watching for 11 minutes and have decided, on the basis of evidence, that he is exactly the person they need. Not because he is perfect, not because he has the right clothes or the right table or the right way of filling a room, because he stayed, because he knows how to fix things with imperfect stitches that hold, because he keeps a story in his pocket for the moments when someone needs a rope back to themselves, because when 4 children whispered to him in a ballroom and asked him to be something he wasn't, he understood, without being told, that he already was.